Will you join me in prayer? Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Every year, the season of Advent begins 4 Sundays before Christmas. And every year, it catches me by surprise. You'd think that after doing this work for 32 consecutive years, I would figure out that Advent always begins right after Thanksgiving, but it always catches me off guard. I am never ready for Advent. I never have the liturgy for the longest night service worked out far enough ahead that the liturgical dancers can practice their routines. I never have the Christmas Eve liturgy worked out far enough in advance that our musicians and choir members can rehearse their music as early as they want. I never have themes planned out for the Sundays of Christmastide. Every year, I wake up the day after Thanksgiving in a panic, realizing that Advent has snuck up on me yet again, and I'm going to drive myself crazy trying to catch up. There is a part of me that is wary of these weeks between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Just thinking about everything that needs to get done is exhausting. In our culture, the pace of life becomes frenetic in December. The Christmas shopping season officially begins when the float carrying Santa and his sleigh arrives in Herald Square in New York City during the annual Thanksgiving Day parade. But if you have waited until then to start your Christmas shopping, you are already way behind. Stores started stocking Christmas merchandise even before Halloween. And that usual mob that appears on Black Friday has been diluted by doorbuster sales on Thanksgiving Day. Those incessant bells ringing beside the Salvation Army kettles outside of every retail establishment is like an alarm warning us that things are going to get frantic as we move into this new season. Every year, our culture promises us that we can have the perfect Christmas if all the right things just come together. Charity appeals promise us that we can spread Christmas cheer throughout the world if we just donate some of our wealth to those who are less fortunate than us. Christmas movies and made-for-television specials promise us that we can overcome even the craziest family dynamics if we just show up in the true spirit of Christmas. Merchandisers promise that we can bring the magic of Christmas into a child's life with the right toy. We can kindle the romance of Christmas with the right diamond. We can preserve the elegance of Christmas with a red bow on the right luxury automobile. In our culture, hope at this time of the year is tied to our making all the right decisions, to our finding the right gifts for the people we care about, for our serving the right beverages at our Christmas parties. It is conditional hope. Hope that depends on our doing the right things. And that's why we get so frantic during these weeks before Christmas. We get caught up in the conditional hope of our culture. We get seduced by the message that we can have the perfect Christmas if we find the right gifts for everyone on our lists. If we get all those Hallmark cards addressed and in the mail on time. If we get the cookies baked. If we get the tree up and the lights hung and the house decorated. If everyone makes it home for Christmas. If no one gets traumatized by the children's Christmas program. If the weather cooperates and we get enough snow to have a Bing Crosby white Christmas, but not so much snow that it interferes with people's travel plans. If. Every year during these frantic weeks of December, we gather up all of our Christmas ifs. And we try to hold them all together. But it never works. No matter how hard we try, no matter how frantic we get, no matter how much money we spend, no matter how much advanced planning we get done, something is going to drop. Hope that is conditioned on our getting everything right always disappoints. This year, like every other year, will not be a perfect Christmas. But today, our reading from the first chapter of Luke's nativity story reminds us that Advent hope isn't about what we do. Advent hope is about what God is doing. The biblical story of Christmas isn't about Mary frantically getting ready for Christ's birth. On the contrary, Mary was preoccupied with other matters at the time. Her parents had made arrangements with another family in her small village of Nazareth for Mary to be betrothed to a local carpenter named Joseph. That's what Mary had on her mind in the biblical Christmas story. Mary wasn't frantically getting ready for the advent of the Messiah. She was busy making her own wedding preparations. She was getting ready to leave her parents' home and start a new home with Joseph and begin having a family together. It was a busy time for Mary, but the busyness had nothing to do with Christmas. Christmas was an unexpected interruption. In Luke's nativity story, Gabriel, the angelic messenger from God, showed up unannounced and unexpected with news that turned the plans that Mary was making for her own life upside down. God's plans for her life were bigger and bolder and more expansive than anything Mary had ever imagined. Mary's hope was magnified by her encounter with the angel Gabriel. Instead of dreaming about her own future, she began dreaming about God's future. Instead of being preoccupied with her own little family, she began thinking more deeply about her connection with the entire human family. This young, unremarkable peasant woman from a tiny rural village far removed from any center of power or influence suddenly began dreaming of the role that she had to play in establishing God's reign of love and justice and peace throughout the earth. Her hope was rooted not in any plans of her own making, but in her willingness to participate in God's plans to change the world for good. According to Luke's nativity story, God's intervention in human affairs began with the words, "Do not be afraid." Do not be afraid. When the angel Gabriel revealed God's plans to Mary, he didn't say, "Get busy, you're already behind schedule." He didn't give Mary a detailed list of all the things that needed to be accomplished before the baby was born. He didn't prescribe any sacred rituals that had to be enacted in order to celebrate God's entrance into the affairs of humanity. He said, "Do not be afraid." The power of the Most High will overshadow you. With God, nothing will be impossible. And in response, Mary said, "Let it be. Let it be with me according to your word." That's the hope that's at the heart of Advent. It's not about the plans that we make. It's about what God is planning. And not just for us, but for the whole world. It's the hope of the incarnation. The hope that God's love is being born into our world every moment of every day. The hope that God's kingdom can never be defeated. The hope that God's mercy is new every morning. The hope that no matter how badly we mess things up in our personal relationships, in our social structures, in our political policies, in our international affairs with God, nothing will be impossible. The only thing that we absolutely have to do between now and Christmas Day is to be like Mary. to be receptive to the messengers that God sends into our lives, to allow our hope to be magnified, to be willing to have our own plans for our own personal lives disrupted in order to accommodate God's plans for the world. To be open to the possibility that as small and as inconsequential as our lives often seem, God can work through us to change the world. There are no ifs attached to the hope of Advent. God's reign of love is being born into our world in new and unexpected ways. All of the preparations that we make in these weeks before Christmas are simply opportunities for us to celebrate and to give thanks for what God is doing in our lives, in our network of family and social relationships, in our church, in our community, in our country, around the globe, to reconcile the world in love. Do not be afraid. The power of the Most High will overshadow you. With God, nothing will be impossible. So let it be.